Hi there, listener, and welcome to episode 77. Thanks for joining us. Firstly, as always, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the podcast. They've been such great supporters of the podcast, and I really couldn't do this without them. And to me, it's such a pleasure to get out there, which I have done since our last update. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. I wonder, listener, where you might be today listening to this. I tend to listen to podcasts while I'm running, but you might be in a car, at the gym, or maybe sitting at your desk working. But wherever you are, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And you can always tell your snow-loving friends about us too. Very easy to share, particularly if you're listening to us on Spotify. Now, in this episode, we're going to be discussing the Olympics, summer and winter, skiing in Northern Ireland. But firstly, I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to introduce Olympian Emily Sarsfield Power for her second appearance on the show. Hi, Emily. How are you?
Hello. How are you? I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. And joining us again, I think for the third time, is World Cup winning telemarker Jasmin Taylor. Hi, Jasmin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'd like to start with the first question I always ask my guests, which is, when did you ski or snowboard last? Possibly it hasn't changed since you were on the show last, but let's find out. Emily, when did you ski last?
Now, this is the longest period I've ever gone without my skis on my feet, so it's really bizarre. The last time I skied was Easter 2020, so that's over a year since I skied, and I think that's the longest in my whole entire life, because I think I had skis on when I was about 1.5. So
right, okay. You did.
So
I think you did well to get out there in Easter 2020.
Oh no, sorry. That's then it's 19 then.
Right, okay. Even worse than that. Where was that?
In Maribel.
In Maribel. And what about you, Jasmin? I think because you spent some time in the Alps, and I know that you skied last winter, but when was it you did actually ski last?
Well, technically just the other day.
Really? Excellent.
At Hemel Hempstead. Apart from that, I was skiing last in April, so it's quite a while.
I still think skiing in Hemel Hempstead counts. It's on snow. When I interviewed Iain Brown a while ago, who's the general manager there, he claimed Hemel Hempstead. So that definitely still counts. When you skied back in April, where was that?
So I spent the season in Les Houches in the Chamonix Valley. Even though the resorts were not open, we'd have like a kind of special access for training. So I was able to train, but properly skiing, it was probably Zermatt at the end of the season for a Basie course. So
right,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, nice place to go. Listeners to the last episode will know that I went out to Zermatt to try and get some skiing in, and happened to turn up on one of the days when the list was closed. This was back in July. I really hoped I was going to get an extra ski day in, but it didn't happen. But talking of skiing, we've covered skiing in the UK over the last year, because lots of our listeners have been forced to, not been able to go overseas and skied in the UK. And we've had reports from Wales, Scotland and England in previous episodes. But did you know that you can ski in Northern Ireland as well? Earlier this week, I spoke to Mark Thompson and David Hogg, who told me about their experiences. Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Thompson and David Hogg just now. How are you guys?
Keeping well, yep.
Yeah, doing well.
Excellent. Well, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is, we've covered quite a lot of skiing around the UK in this, horrible winter we had last winter where people didn't get to go away. And we've had reports from skiing in Wales and from skiing in Scotland and also from skiing in England. But you contacted me, Mark, because you've been skiing in Northern Ireland, which I thought was great. Can't be much skiing going on over there. Whereabouts did you go, Mark?
So we headed out to the Mourne Mountain range, it's called, just near Newcastle there, kind of south end of Northern Ireland.
Okay, so, yes, I think I did look it up on the map. It's quite near the border with the Republic of Ireland, sort of near to Dundalk, is that right?
Yeah, near enough around there, yeah. So
okay.
We were both getting a bit frustrated, given the current global climate with COVID and everything, no skiing for ourselves, so kind of thought we got a good bit of snow for kind of Northern Ireland, and we thought, goodness, there might be enough here to hike up and see what we can ski.
Great. And when was that then?
This was in around Christmas there, kind of 2 weeks after Christmas. I think that's when we got most of our snow.
Right. Okay. And so it was all. There's no lifts there. You have to hike yourself, or were you ski touring possibly?
No, there wasn't even enough snow to ski tour up. It was get the skis on the back and an hour and 45 hike up.
Okay, an hour and 45 hike up. I think I had a look, and it looks like it's about 800 meters, 850 meters around there. Is that right?
850, yeah, in around there, yeah.
So what's the drop that you get? What do you earn for your walking then?
There was one kind of, well, it was actually Comida, one of the mountains in the Mournes we were skiing. So Comida's just under 850, maybe 840. So we were probably getting around 300 meters there.
How many times did you walk back up then?
Probably about 6 times, yeah. It was, you weren't getting a lot of bang for your buck. Like you weren't getting too many vertical meters.
Yeah, but you're getting some skiing in, which
we're getting some
is fantastic. That's really good. And David, you also skied. So as well as skiing down in the south, in the Mourne Mountains, you also kind of went a little bit further afield as well. Where was the other spot that you went to?
Yeah, that's right. So we went to Errigal Mountain in Donegal. So that actually is over the border into Ireland. But it's kind of a wee bit more in the north in the Mourne Mountains. I would say Errigal was probably better. It was a longer run. It was kind of a shoot. And we actually ended up building a kicker at the top of it.
Did you? Actually,
yeah.
I think I saw that because you sent me some TikTok links, which I'll include in the show notes, of you guys on your kicker there. It looked quite fun.
Yeah. So Mark there, he's a bit more adventurous than me. He was throwing the odd backflip, so he was. And he landed a few as well, credit to him. So, yeah, it was really fun. And it was probably, again, a couple of 100 meters. So worth the hike up.
Yeah, good work, Mark. What was the how long was the hike up for that mountain?
Errigal, not as long, probably about an hour up it.
Okay, and similar descent?
Similar descent, probably about 200, 300 meters, yeah, as much.
Okay, but I'm thinking if you made a kicker and you were actually doing backflips, the snow was a bit better on that occasion.
Yeah, the snow was probably better. The snow packed was probably the hardest thing we encountered up there. We actually, because you can't really build or form a jump, so we kind of improvised. We made one of our mates hike up with a skateboard ramp, so we kind of got that into the snow.
Hold on. So you walked up with your skis, and this guy had a skateboard ramp over his back, and he had to haul that up.
Yeah,
good mate he was. Ethan Hill, he's called.
Right.
The best bit about it all was, Iain, that Ethan didn't even get to ski.
It's good to have friends like that.
Yeah,
and so where do you normally do your skiing then?
Normally, well, we're just back. We spent a year in Canada there, over in Banff. So we were out we had a gap year right there and just skied for the full season. Sunshine Village was our resort. So
brilliant. And what were you doing out there, David?
So we worked in the lifts, and our job contract was kind of interesting. We had 2 hours a day skiing. So you went up in the morning. Usually if it was a powder day, I would have took first break in the morning, and you would have got all the fresh powder before all the guests come up to the resort. So it was really, really good. You were getting first run down the mountain. And then ever since, that was 2 years ago, so I've been going out every year. So I went out last year to Lake Louise, kicking a horse and Sunshine, and then if we can get away this winter, I plan to head out to BC, maybe Revelstoke or somewhere, but kind of fingers crossed at the minute we might have to settle for Errigal and the Mournes again.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, it's very dynamic. We just talked about, well, we're going to be talking about that later in the podcast with Katie from Battleface. But I'm if you listen to the podcast, I'm ever optimistic and suffer from optimism bias. I'm confident we'll all get skiing, hopefully this winter. And just while we're chatting, what's the ski scene like in Northern Ireland? Are there many skiers?
There's a lot of keen skiers that would kind of go out every year. I know a couple of guys that have done seasons, quite a few actually. Some in Whistler, guy Josh Anderson, a good friend of ours. He was out in Whistler. So yeah, there's quite a big holiday ski season. They wouldn't be maybe as hardcore.
I guess you're relying on, if you're looking to ski in Europe or even in Canada, you need to have flights that are connecting from Belfast, right, to make that work.
Yeah, you can fly out of Dublin. Yeah, it's right. It's a bit more effort probably, but if you want to ski, you can ski.
And thanks for sharing that with us. And I think we've now completed the set of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland for domestic skiing. And do get in contact again if you're skiing in Northern Ireland, because I'd love to hear more about it. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks, David.
Absolutely.
Cool,
Thanks,
thank
Iain.
you.
And just after recording this episode, we got this update from Alex Irwin, friend of the show, who'd been out to Teen at the end of July and updates us on the conditions out there.
Hi Iain, Alex from 150 Days of Winter with a snow report from the Grand Motte Glacier in Teen. The glacier officially closed for skiers at the start of August, but I managed to get up there on the 29th for what was the last sunny day on the slopes, and boy was it worth it. Blue skies, endless views, and more importantly a great snowpack. Absolute nirvana for summer skiing. From the base of the Grand Motte gondola, everything looked a little grey and worn. However, when you started skiing down, you realised everything was all right. I bumped into Phil Smith from Snowworks Ski Courses, who very kindly let us have a run down their slalom course, and it was next to perfect. Absolutely amazing. There were signs of plenty of snow farming with blocks of covered snow at the bottom of nearly all the slopes, showing Teen's commitment to snow management, even on the glacier. It was just a shame to leave at 11:30, but as all good things have to come to an end. Seeing the conditions, I can't wait until October for the glacier's autumn reopening. Luckily, Teen also has great summer activities to do around the lake, and from great mountain biking and walking tracks to a crazy water slide into the lake. If you want to see how we got on, please check out my YouTube channel, 150 Days of Winter. So until October, ciao.
Also, that was great to listen to about skiing in Northern Ireland. So we've covered all the countries of the United Kingdom now. Regular listeners will also recall that I spoke to Andy Meldrum from Glencoe about their midsummer ski event, and he also told us a little bit more about how he came to buy the resort and how they got on last winter. You know, I introduced you as being the owner of Glencoe, but from our little chat in the Blue Room earlier, I think I'm right in saying that the idea of becoming the owner came about during one of these midsummer skis. Is that right?
Yeah, it wasn't actually midsummer. We were up 13 years ago. We were skiing in the last day of the season, and I came down the chairlift, said to the lift operator at the bottom, chap by the name of Chizzy, we'll see you midsummer as normal. And he said, oh, you might not because the business is up for sale. And that was the first we had heard of that. And at that point in time, we were really just curious to know what a ski area, what it actually sold for, how much it was worth, and things. Then, they just developed from there. We put in an inquiry just out of curiosity, and then realised that it was probably something that was possible. And I've always been interested in snow, interested in in the industry. Used to work as a ski instructor a long time ago before getting a proper job. So yeah, and that's how it came about. And 6 months after that initial interaction at the bottom of the lift, we in late November we got involved, got the ski area, and we it was a really difficult period because I think the previous 5 years the business had really struggled. So we came in with a ski area that had a lot of challenges, but luckily we had a good first 2 seasons, got on our feet, and since then it's been pretty good with its challenges, especially the last 2 seasons with with COVID and restrictions.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned that. I have to ask you about that. I mean, thinking about comparison with a more normal season, did you get any revenues in at all? Were you able to open in any realistic way? I think at times it was open for domestic market, but at other times not.
Yeah, we actually opened on the 5th of December on man-made snow for sledging and beginners. We had enough snow that we had made. And then just between Christmas and New Year, we opened for skiers and sledgers. We were controlling, skier numbers. We had online ticketing that we just put in place, controlled the numbers, local people only. And it all seemed to be going, very well until the 4th of January. And we were told that, skiing wasn't happening this year. And we kept expecting it to reopen and reopen and reopen. And it eventually reopened just as our lift up tracks broke and we had not enough snow open, so we really didn't get a season out of it. I think we had just under 1,000 skier days this year.
You can listen to the rest of that interview with Andy Meldrum from Glencoe in episode 75, and talking about our old episodes. We've got over 100 to catch up on. So if you're a new listener, have a look on the website, theskipodcast.com. Look for a tag or category that takes your interest, and there's plenty there. Now, quick question for you two, Emily and Jasmin. Have either of you ever skied in Northern Ireland?
I have never skied in Northern Ireland.
No, me neither.
Yeah, I'm not sure many people have. What about Scotland? Have you skied there?
Yes, I did have a horizontal wind situation one time in Scotland, but also actually had a really good ski day there as well. We used to have a few competitions up there as well, which was great.
Okay, and Jasmin, have you skied in Scotland?
Yeah, I have actually, just for a week when I was a teenager, and then I went in July and I hiked up and skied a patch of snow with some friends. So technically yes, but it was about 100 meters worth of skiing.
Excellent. In July of this year?
No, it was a few years ago. It's probably,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know when.
Yeah, well, very similar to the midsummer experience that Andy was talking about at Glencoe then, where, you know, depending on the snow, they would open up the lift, or if there isn't a lift, you have to hike up there. And this year, 2021, they had about a 200 meter, 300 meter stretch of snow, and they had 30 people turn up for it. You can catch up with that one, Jasmin, in episode 75. That's lovely to hear about skiing, but when will we get on the snow, or indeed anywhere overseas next? The situation is always very dynamic. We had some good news this week with France coming off that stupid Amber Plus list. But to talk us through it all, I spoke to Katie Crowe from Battleface Travel Insurance earlier this week to talk through the current situation. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, Ian. I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Like you, I've been away since we last spoke. I think you went to Mallorca, didn't you? How was that trip?
That's right. Yeah, I spent just over 2.5 weeks in Mallorca, just outside of Palma. It was absolutely fantastic. Really amazing to get away.
Excellent. I'm delighted to hear that and that you managed to get away. Obviously, everything changes on a regular basis, but there have been some more changes for travel in the last week or so that certainly look a bit more positive. I guess the most important one probably for British people is the fact that France has come off the Amber Plus list, which is a very stupid idea. Anyway, but it does mean that fully vaccinated people can come back to the UK without quarantining. There have been a whole bunch of countries added to the green list, which affects people listening to this show, listeners. I mean, Austria, very key alpine destination, is on there. Slovenia and Slovakia are both ski places as well as Romania. Now, we're a long way away from the ski season. Norway's on there as well, and Germany. So all of those places, again, no quarantine required, and vaccinated and non-vaccinated people can travel back and forth. All of that was too late for me for my trip to France. I had to quarantine and take a bunch of tests. And the cost of the tests is pretty significant. I think I worked it out that for mine, with a couple of lateral flows, because when I went the first time, you needed to have it going into Switzerland, and then one coming back, a day 2 and 8 test, and a day 5 test to release. All in all, cost me a bit over £300. Now, I could kind of afford to do that because partly Switzerland Tourism supported my trip, and partly because we haven't been away. But to take a family away, 4 times £300, that is a huge amount to add on to the cost of travel. How did you do it for your trip to Mallorca? And I think you've also got some survey info about what people think about the cost of tests.
Absolutely, yeah. Even with quarantine scrapped for fully vaccinated arrivals from Europe and the USA, the cost of testing remains completely prohibitive. Last week, as you rightly said, I came back from Mallorca and had a fantastic time out there. But the cost of testing, it came for the 3 of us, myself and my 2 children, to go out there, came to just under £600 on top of the travel costs, which is obviously a huge financial burden for us. And we did do a survey, and the poll actually revealed that Brits are prepared to pay an average of £61 per person for all required tests to travel internationally. And that is just not the case right now. I mean, you're looking at sort of, as you say, it's cost you £300. It's £600 for me and a family of four could add up to £1,000.
So can I ask a question about that? Then you're saying people were in the survey that Battleface did. They asked people how much they'd be prepared to pay. Is that how it worked? And gave them brackets and worked out that £61 was the average.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is interesting. I mean, £61 compared to the 300 or so. I didn't have to spend that much. I looked around, I could have done it for less, but I chose a couple of options specifically. I chose for my day 2, 8 and 8 tests, I chose a supplier where I got to leave the house to go and take my test down there, because, you're allowed to leave the house to go and take your test down and drop it off. So I turned that into, a jog down there and a jog back. There were probably cheaper ones. And for my day 5 test to release one, I also went up to Gatwick, because they got a testing centre up there, which is amazing, I have to say. It's just they've taken over one of the long-term car parks, which isn't being used anymore, and it's massive, this place, and so efficient. I did pick that one because they said they were going to give the results back in 24 hours. It ended up being slightly more than 24 hours, but there were cheaper options around. I think in the paper today, there's a number of MPs and various people who are lobbying the government to try and persuade them to replace that PCR test on the return to the UK, or PCR tests when you come back into the UK with lateral flow tests. So that day 2 and possibly day 8, which would bring the cost down.
Absolutely. Well, as you say, this week the government's made another announcement with regards to the traffic light system. Yeah, they've just announced that they would recommend that all travellers coming back from Spain should, advise to use a PCR test as their pre-departure test. But looking at the costs of both tests, an antigen test in Mallorca costs €30, and it's been capped at that price, whereas a PCR test costs over €100. So quite frankly, people are not going to opt for doing a PCR test. They're going to go with the lateral flow, the antigen test, because it's much, much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I saw exactly the same thing in Chamonix. You can go into a pharmacy and get a antigen test for €29 done there and then. So there's a significant saving for having it that way around, and that would be great. I did also notice that Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, said this week, or maybe even yesterday, that he thought this whole system would continue through until the autumn. But to be honest with you, I kind of feel it's bound to end up going into the winter as well. We talk about skiing here and how it's going to affect us. Do you think we'll still be taking tests to travel as well as proof of vaccination come the winter?
I'm sure we will. Yeah, I really think we will be, because there's a lot of new variants coming into play, and they're trying to keep a real hands on that. That's why they're advising a use of a PCR test before coming back to the UK now, because they're much clearer tests, and they can really detect and keep abreast of the latest data and variants.
Yeah, I mean, call me cynical, but there's been a huge amount of money being earned out of these tests. And equally today, there was an article about saying that I think it was only 5% of positive PCR tests have been sequenced. So this whole argument about, looking out for variants and things like that doesn't stack up if that work, isn't being done. That's the whole reason for testing people, in theory, when they come back into the UK. And so, just let's finish with FCO advice. I mean, the one of the points about Battleface Travel Insurance, why we've been talking to you and why I came across it in the first place, is that, if the FCO advise against non-essential travel, then you'll still be covered under Battleface Travel Insurance. Have those rules changed at all?
No, Battleface policies are available and accessible and cover destinations worldwide, regardless of the traffic light colour, and also include those under FCDO advisories. So if you are, you're out in Spain and that changes traffic light colour, you will still be absolutely covered with our policies.
Well, that's great. I'm delighted to hear that you had a good trip. Will you be going overseas again this summer, or is 2.5 weeks in Mallorca enough for you?
I'm hoping to get to the States soon, actually. So
Right. Okay. I think Battleface are based over there or something. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm hoping to go over in the coming weeks. Just
Okay.
depends when the government opens up. When Biden reciprocates with our arrangement.
And I believe that we might be able to see you in the papers this weekend as well. This podcast will come out on Monday, so it might be a little too late. But you had an interview yesterday that's going to be in the Daily Mail, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I had an interview about the cost of testing for my trip to Spain, and that's appearing in tomorrow's Mail, I believe. I was in the Independent, the Express, and the Telegraph online this week.
Well, that's brilliant, Katie. Good to speak to you, and we'll chat again in a couple of weeks' time.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Iain.
Well, thanks to Katie for that. Now, I'm sure, listener, like me, you've been enjoying watching the Tokyo Olympics. It seems a bit strange after a year-long delay that's the 2020 Olympics, but it does mean there's now less than 6 months, or about 6 months, until the Winter Olympics in Beijing. And the reason I asked Emily and Jasmin to join me today is that both of them have competed professionally, and Jasmin still is at the highest level. So let's start off with a little chat about it. Jasmin, what event in the Winter Olympics will you be most looking forward to watching?
I always enjoy the Alpine for obvious reasons, but also the ski jumping, cross-country skiing, all of it really.
Excellent. Cross-country skiing perhaps has the closest fit with your telemarking events?
Well, it's a combination. It's probably a combination of those three I mentioned. So it's probably why I enjoy watching those. But yeah, it has the downhill element of Alpine, but we have the free hill of ski jumping and cross country. So it's very much the blend of all of those.
Right. Okay. And Emily, you represented Great Britain in the ski across at the Winter Olympics. So I'm going to take a guess. Will you tell me though? What event will you be looking forward to watching?
Yeah, I mean, ski cross is that kind of adrenaline sport where it's a little bit like the 100-meter sprint, where the first one across the finish line wins. So you don't really need to know much about it to kind of grasp it as a spectator. So it's always a good one to watch. So I'll be looking forward to that, and obviously all my fellow peers and stuff who I competed with will be in there. So got a lot of friends competing, but also I don't know, I love the Olympics because there's so much kind of you get to see on your regular TV screen. So that's why I'm absolutely glued to the screen right now. But I think also I'll be looking forward to see the Brits, and we've got probably the strongest kind of British team we've ever had taken to a games. Maybe the biggest depth and of talent we've had as well. So that'll be really interesting to see where the Brits kind of end up, because we're not normally known for those winter sports, but now we've got world champions, we've got people who are regularly on the World Cup podiums, like Jazz. Obviously Jazz won't be in the Olympics because events not in the Olympics, but there's many kind of athletes up there who are going to be good in for a medal. So I think that'll be really cool to see that.
I mean, you're right. And certainly the ambitions for GB Snowsports are very high. I did actually get a press release yesterday, which I haven't looked at in so much detail, but they have announced the teams for the free ski and snowboard squads for this winter. And again, there's, as you mentioned, there's a huge amount of talent in there, and a lot of people who've picked up medals already. I think the ambition from Vicky Gosling, who is the CEO of GB Snowsports, is that they want to have Britain at 5th in the medal table for alpine sports. And I don't think that's for this Olympic cycle. I think it's for the one after, because you'd need to get, a fairly considerable number of medals. If you think that, Jenny Jones was the first ever alpine medal in Sochi, and then there were 2 medals, I think I'm right in saying, in the last Olympics. So I think they probably need to get up to 5 or something like that to get the placing that they're looking for. But that's entirely possible with the squad of athletes who are there. Jazz, you have any views on that? Anyone you're looking out for on the British team?
Like Emily, all of them. You do want to see all of them do well. Actually, I remember you competing, Emily, and it's a really nice feeling to see somebody up there representing. And you
Yeah.
look like you had such a good time as well. I remember watching. I thought, oh, she must be having the best time right now. She just looked like you look like you're loving it.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a journey for me to get there, wasn't it? So I think once I actually got there, I was just like, do you know what? Take any pressure off and enjoy this moment. But yeah, I mean,
wow, and it just all came. Yeah, it was great to
I think
watch.
that's the thing, because a little bit of a backstory here, Iain, is I actually coached Jazz back when she did alpine
did you? Right.
skiing back in the day. So kind of the ski world in the UK, it's so small, and I used to train with Dave Riding, and obviously Laurie Taylor, who's part of the slalom team. He was there with you at that time when you were training, wasn't he, Jazz?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew they were both going to do well because they had the same kind of attitude, because that's what sport's about. It's not just about being talented; it's about having that back mentality to actually push yourself. And so knowing these people and knowing their journey and stuff like that, it's like you kind of have that personal experience of them as well when you're watching them on the screen. So yeah, it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the team list now, and I would say, there's so many medal prospects there. On the women's snowboard, Katie Ormerod and Mia Brooks, definite possibilities. And on the in the skiing side of things, I mean, James Woods has always been very close. We now have Gus Kenworthy in the team, who's a previous Olympic medal winner, has transferred over from the US team. And in terms of the women, well, Izzy Atkin, Zoe Atkin is equally as good. Kirsty Muir, very good chance. Maddie Rowlands. So there's lots of medal prospects. It's very exciting at that side of things. I interviewed Pat Sharples a few episodes ago. Listener, if you want to look it up, we have a ski podcast special interview with Pat Sharples, and the job that he's done there in nurturing and bringing through all of those athletes, many of whom he's known since they were very young kids. He helped them get into that freestyle scene, is so encouraging. It's such a great setup that they have there, and they clearly have a very close team spirit between them all.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he was back from the Sheffield days, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He had them all training there, like Woodsy and the Summer Haze and stuff. So yeah, it's great to see it. But also wider than that as well, Iain. Like, we got the moguls guys on the podium and stuff this year.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like all the different disciplines.
And also, I didn't mention it obviously, but in the ski across, in the last world, we've got Charlotte Banks, who is a world champion, and I think that I'm trying to think of his name now, Oliver Davies.
Yeah.
Now he placed on the podium, didn't he? So
he was fourth. Yeah.
Oh, he was fourth. Okay.
Yeah, but he was in the final. So that was his first major big final on the world tour at the World Championships, and came fourth. And just 2 days before, Charlotte Banks had just won gold in the snowboard cross. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah, so many medal prospects out there. Now, thinking about an event like that, Jasmin, you've competed on the World Cup circuit and in World Championships. When you've got a big event coming up, how far out does your preparation for that event start? I mean, I know you're probably always preparing, but if you have a focus on a particular thing, what's your timeline for that?
Well, the races most of them are between January and March, and my season, in my mind, starts on the 1st of May. So I'll actually backdate and have a training program that prepares me to be fit for those 3 months. And then you have top-up training sessions within the 3 months that sort of sharpen you up, if you like.
So obviously it's all specific to different sports, but you're talking about what would normally perhaps be termed periodization from May to January. So you're focusing on different elements through that period, month by month.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So for your discipline, is it endurance early on and then fine tuning speed and skills later?
Actually, I've never had 2 years the same. So I always do something different, depending on whatever we think, wherever there's a missing link that we perceive, if you like. So this year, for example, I'm doing strength and then speed strength, and then it will probably go into power and that kind of thing. But it's just wherever there's a weak link, and we try and deal with that.
Sure, that makes sense. And what about yourself, Emily, then? So very specific in terms of those Olympic cycles. How far out would your preparation start for that type of thing?
Yeah, it's a 4-year cycle. So as soon as you finish one Olympics, one Olympics has just passed, you're preparing for the next one. So ultimately, that's the major sporting stage for pretty much most athletes if they're sports Olympic sport. So kind of like you're putting the stepping stones and the building blocks in 4 years out, which kind of feels bizarre. But but when it comes to kind of like a smaller periodization, like Jazz has just said, kind of on that kind of yearly thing, April, get a little bit downtime, maybe it's a little bit in May, and that's when you can try for sports and do all sorts of fun stuff. But then it kind of comes into that muscular endurance, like you said, and then building that strength phase into that kind of leading into that power phase. Obviously, the skill side of things has always got to be kind of like fine-tuned. You can't kind of jeopardize that skill whilst you're doing kind of like those other kind of strength phase and stuff like that. So it's important to keep that fine-tuned. And you'll do that when you go out onto your skis. Majority of this kind of stuff can actually happen back in the UK. So we've got amazing facilities in the UK as well. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why the UK team can kind of be up there matching with those people who've got snow in their back, in their playground, in their backyard, because we've got this amazing sports science facilities and knowledge within the UK, which can kind of bring that level of our performance up. So, but yeah, it's definitely one long cycle of 4 years. So when kind of like things like injuries come in year 2, you're kind of like restructuring that cycle to kind of make sure you can get out of it. But bizarre that the summer guys had a 5-year cycle, because that you kind of really are ready to kind of peak towards that 4-year. So for some of those guys, it would have been difficult to kind of continue that on for another year, especially if they're an older athlete and stuff when you're managing injuries. But also would have helped a lot of people out who were maybe injured last year, who were going to miss the games, and that gives them another 12 months to kind of get themselves back and ready to compete, ready for 21 for their 2020 Olympics.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it must have been, so difficult for the athletes for this Olympics, not really knowing whether or not it's going to go ahead. I mean, both of you have mentioned the fitness side of things and the skills side of things, but it strikes me that for any event, but particularly at the highest level, it's the mental attitude that you take into it, the psychological side of things. And Jazz, I wondered how you deal with that. Do you have a coach for that side of things as well, or do you deal with that yourself? Do you go through, positive mental visualization prior to events?
Yeah, all of that. I do work with somebody through the University of Suffolk, Manos Georgiadis. He's Greek, but he's been working with me for a number of years. And yeah, Emily will tell you, when I was a teenager, I had my heart set on being the best in skiing. And with that, I think you put lots of different sorts of pressure on yourself as well. It's hard enough being a teenager and just a human, actually, but with everything else on top, that it can get to you at times. I think it's important to have a strategy or a process that you can fall back on when you're not having a good day. So all of that. But you never, I don't know about you, Emily, but I've never had 2 races exactly the same. You have elements that work for you, and a kind of, it's like a blend of ingredients that okay, I'm onto a good one here, or I'm not onto a good one. I'm not feeling confident, but you have to perform anyway. So it's always changing. It's really difficult. I'd say that is the most difficult part.
So if, for example, you're saying you work on visualization, etc., but then I guess when you get to the start line, there's so many variables in the course of any particular race, which might be from the weather, or maybe how the course is set up, or who particularly arrives on that day, that can affect those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like sometimes visualization works perfectly, and other times you have a really good run and you didn't visualize anything.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the visualization for an athlete is something you can control. And as athletes, we control the controllables, and that's what always get banged into us. You can only control the controllables. And so visualization is one of those ones you can box off, we can deal with. What you can't deal with is the deeper gremlins or whatever they are, which are kind of like, you know, inside, which you don't know when they're going to pop out. And that's when you kind of got to build those strategies, what Jazz works on with her kind of mental coach, to kind of be able to overcome so they don't jeopardize your performance. But I mean, as an athlete, you're constantly, daily working on your mental approach. Once you get a little bit as an older athlete as well, it's those kind of outdoor kind of, you know, your friends have maybe just bought a new house or they've just had promotion at work, and you sit there and you kind of battle with these things going, oh, should I be doing that too? You know, at that age, should I, what am I doing skiing? I should really, so it's not even the pressures you get on from your particular sport, it's the pressures from everyday life, which you kind of got to work out as well. And where am I going to get the next paycheck to be able to get to that flight, to that competition? And that's always something as a British athlete, which is an additional stress, which, a British winter athlete, which is an additional stress, which some of our peers maybe don't have because they've got a more structured funding program and stuff. It's really great to see now that things like Ellie Suter Foundation and things like that are in place to support athletes a little bit more to relieve those pressures. An elite athlete is not someone who's just talented at sport. It's someone who's got the mental capacity to be able to push themselves daily and find strategies to overcome that. And I think that's what makes ultimately the top athletes.
For sure. And I think you mentioned the Ellie Suter Foundation. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes, but that is a foundation set up to, let's say, help athletes who might be dealing with depression or something like that. And you talk about the individual challenges people face, you know, watching these Summer Olympics. I think everybody's probably been aware of Simone Biles, one of the strongest favourites ever to win medals. So even she has felt the pressure to an extent. And, you know, outside of the Olympics, Ben Stokes at the moment, I believe, is needing to take some time. And how, being able to control all of those pressures, including what you're saying, those that are completely outside the sporting environment, maybe you're having to think about what perhaps social media is more of a factor these days. From what you've said, I think maybe you might have read the Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters, and I think Steve Peters was very involved with lots of British teams, but particularly the cycling team, I think, in terms of improving or trying to get them to focus their mind to get that psychological preparation right. And the kind of idea behind it is that you said that you have these little trigger points within you that keep coming out, and being able to recognize it and get on top of it, whatever it might be that can happen. I compete on a completely different level, but a kind of age group level in triathlon and running. And a classic example would be, for example, if you get a puncture or there's probably can't get your wetsuit off quickly enough, and suddenly all these ideas in your mind explode, and you just need to put those behind you, like you were saying. What can you control? You can't control that. Focus on the controllables. Think about this Winter Olympics then. It's going to be in Beijing. Pat Sharples mentioned to me the fact that it's going to be primarily artificial snow in artificial resorts. They haven't been able to go and do test events because of COVID. Emily, how much difference do you think that will make, not having been able to go out there in advance?
Yeah, it's huge. In downhill skiing, we're doing a gravity-based sport. So our equipment is just as important sometimes as our skill base. So having the right wax preparations on your skis is so important, and not going and feeling those conditions beforehand will be really difficult for kind of the technicians who prepare all the skis, but also as a mental ability to not seeing the course. In ski cross, for instance, all our courses are they're very different, and they might be more suited. And they might need to be more of a glider or someone who can cope with big jumps and stuff like that. And normally, we always on an Olympics get a test event where we get to kind of go and have a look. It'll not be the exact like for like course, but it'll be that general kind of build. So we'll get to see the obstacle course as per se, a year before. So you kind of then start to build, and then summer preparations will start to we'll build these kind of elements, kind of what we saw in in Europe and practice them. Now, this is a good thing for the Brits because back in 2018, there was a big start feature in Pyeongchang, which no one had ever really seen before. It was a drop start, Wu-Tang, up and over, and it was really quite vertical. So it was very, very technical. Now, the Swiss, the Austrians, all these big European teams were able to go and build the like for like on their own snow. Now, we didn't have access to that, so it always put us a little bit kind of like behind. I managed to kind of make friends with a few people and jump in every now and then on a couple of them, but this probably in a way helps us out. We're all in the same starting line when you go there. But yeah, no, it's really difficult. But the good thing is maybe it puts everyone in the same boat.
I remember the Wu-Tang right at the start of the course in Pyeongchang. It was absolutely massive, wasn't it? It was almost like going uphill to start off with before you could start the race, right?
You're jumping from kind of like the height of a double-story building, free falling down to level 1, then have to ride the back of that and then go up the other side of a 2-story building to get over the side. So where you hit that kind of landing point and get the momentum like a swing to kind of get up and over was kind of quite crucial.
Jasmin, can I ask you a question then? You've actually been competing this winter. You know, there've obviously been COVID protocols in place for all of your races. Has that affected things much? Has it made it more difficult, put extra pressures on you for competing?
Not really. No, it was quite organised. We had we had to test, of course, before leaving when we arrived, but we only lost 2 locations due to change in arrangements with COVID, but 1 was replaced. So in the end, it was just one event we lost, and we actually had just as many days, well, nearly just as many days racing because they'd add extra days in the same location.
So apart from the fact that you had to be tested, they more regularly, it wasn't a particular obstacle in terms of your competition, in terms of how your competition is concerned.
No, the competition was just as normal, except a mask until the very last minute, and then a mask as soon as you finish. But apart from that,
well, we see that in this Summer Olympics as well. And the Summer Olympics has seen new sports such as surfing and skateboarding. Have you guys been watching the skateboarding? I saw some of that this morning. It was brilliant.
It's unreal. And like they're doing such a good job at commentating on it as well.
Yeah, Edley and Tim Woolwood, isn't it? Edley's doing a lot. I saw him; he was doing the climbing as well. Yeah, he's getting some good work from that. Thinking about the Winter Olympics, I read that ski mountaineering is going to be included in the Winter Olympics. Would you guys watch that ski mountaineering?
Yeah, I think I would. I think it'd be quite exciting. I mean, those guys, it's very popular in Courchevel. They're essentially running up the piste, but running. For me, I'm more of like, short, sharp athlete. So I like it to be fast. So as long as it wasn't too long an event.
Well, it's shocking how fast they can be. You talk about Courchevel. During the winter, they have a ski touring race that starts down in Le Prat and goes up to 1850. And I've done that several times now. I'm a bit more experienced at ski touring now than I was, but oh my God, I could not believe how fast some people were doing it. I was such an amateur and I was just trying to get my skis on and this and that. And as you say, they're practically running up the piste. What about you, Jasmin? I bet you do a lot of ski touring. I could see a crossover with what you do just now. Would you be interested in watching it, taking part in it?
Watching, yes. Like Emily, taking part, not really. I like to go at my own pace with that and enjoy the view. That's more like a day off activity. I don't want to be.
Ski mountaineering or ski touring, has become more and more popular. Ski mountaineering is the kind of race element of it. Probably the most famous pure ski mountaineering race is Patrouille de Glaciers. A long time ago in the podcast, I spoke to Philippa Middleton, who took part in that several years ago. It's a team event, but I was in Zermatt last month. I spoke to Martin Anthamatten, who is actually a previous winner of that event. So let's have a listen to what he said. So I'm here in Zermatt today in a lovely cafe. Sadly, it's raining a little bit outside, but I'm with Martin Anthamatten. Hi, Martin. Wie geht's?
Hi, Martin. Hi, thanks. Yes, I'm fine. I have a good day. It was running today in the rain, but it was nice.
Yeah, I was running in the rain as well, and in the snow at some points. We might come back to trail running, but firstly, I was really interested to talk to you. I mean, you're a trail runner, you're a ski mountaineer, and we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the ski mountaineering races that you've done. One that I think a lot of our listeners will have heard of is the Patrouille des Glaciers. Quite a few years ago, I interviewed Philippa Middleton, the sister of Kate Middleton, who did that event. Now, she did it and did a lot of training for it, but I think you've actually won that race before, haven't you?
Yes, the Patrouille des Glaciers for me is a really special race. When I was young, I see always the people who do the race from Zermatt to Verbier, and I'm not understand how we can go from here to Verbier over the glacier, and then for me it was really a big motivation to do this race. And when I do this race, I see the fast people, and then it was really a motivation to be fast in the mountains. And 4 years later, I win the Patrouille des Glaciers, and yes, I'm really happy about this.
And just to clarify then, you said, it's a race that goes from Zermatt to Verbier, but it obviously goes through the mountains. And typically, I think it starts like at 2 a.m. or something like that. Is that right?
Yes, you will start in the night, and the darkness, and in the winter you have snow, it's coldness. It's not so easy.
Yeah, not so easy, but for you, and you also, to clarify as well, you do it in teams of 3 people?
Yes, the Patrouille des Glaciers, you go over the glacier, you have to be on the rope with 3 people together, and it's really a team race. You have to start with these 2 friends, and you have to go to Verbier all together, and yes, it's really a big challenge.
So when you did it and you won it, what was your time? How long did it take you to do that race?
I winning in 5 hours 52. It was a new track record in 2010, and yes, it was the first time people run under 6 hours, and yes, the condition was really fine, and we can ski really a lot, not so a lot in the foot part, and yes, it was the perfect day.
Excellent, congratulations on that. What about your teammates? How did you choose those, or were they chosen for you?
Yes, in the ski mountaineering we have the Swiss team, it's the Swiss national team, and it's always the same. The best 3 people goes on the first team, and you will run for the win, and you have to accept this, and the motivation, but it's really high all the season to be in the best team.
Excellent. And another race you were telling me about, which listeners will be able to relate to, is one out in the Dolomites, the Cellaronda ski marathon. And that one sounds fascinating as well. How long was that, and which resorts does it go through?
Yes, it's really in the Cellaronda group, and you have big ski area there, and you go over the ski slopes in the big passes. And one village is Kanatsay, the second is Wolkenstein, and then you have Araba on the other side, and it's also a 4th one. And the special thing on this race, every year the start and the finish line is in another village, but the track is always the same.
Okay, so it's rotating from one resort to the next year by year. Okay, and that one is a 45-kilometre race with maybe I've put it down here in my notes, 2,500 metres of climbing. Is that right?
Yes, it's a marathon. It's 45 kilometers, and you have to do 2,500 meters in altitude, and it's always special. You start in the evening with the headlamps, and then you go into the night, and it's a big race with a lot of people, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, and how long would that race take then?
We took below 3 hours. I win in this time, and it was also a new record. And yes, you're really fast on the slopes in the downhill, but you are always pushing the uphills. It's really interesting.
Well, so ski mountaineering, is one aspect of what you do, but you're also a trail runner, which I'm interested in. The reason I'm here in Switzerland at the moment is because I've been doing some trail running and practicing. And on Tuesday, I ran the Sierre-Zinal. When I say ran it, I obviously walked a lot of it. It took me about 5.5 hours. I mean, there weren't any other runners around. There were no aid stations, and I lost my way a couple of times. But you've done that Sierre-Zinal race, and that attracts some of the best trail runners in the world, like Kylian Jornet, I think, is a record holder there. But you've got a pretty good time on that. You've done it 8 times now, is that right?
Yes, in Sierre-Zinal I was a lot of time on the 10 best trail runners. But I think Sierre-Zinal is really important. You have always the same track, and it's important you look on the time. My goal was to run one time under 240, and yes, one time I do 139, and I'm really happy with this. And yes, Sierre-Zinal is 1 hour from me. And for me, it's always a big motivation to run there with the best ones from over the world. That's really interesting.
Yeah, well, to put that in context, you're doing it in 2:39, and my kind of non-official time was about 5:39 or something like that when I did it the other day. But I still was able to do it. Now here we're in Zermatt. A couple of weeks ago we had the Zermatt Marathon here, but coming up in August we have a race called the Matterhorn Ultrax, and that's a race that you've helped to create, I think. Is that right?
Yes, it's the Matterhorn Ultrax. It's really a special trail race. We have the start and finish line here in Zermatt, and we have 5 different races. We have 3 normal trail races over 20 till 50 kilometers. We have a vertical race. It's only an uphill race, and then we have the special race, the Ultrax Extreme. He tells extreme, but it's 25 kilometers with 3,000 meters up and down, and it's really technical race with scrambling, with glacier traversing. It's not easy to run this race, but it's really nice.
I can tell from the vertical that I've been doing, that is, very steep. I often, when I look at different races around the world, I kind of, calculate how much vertical there is per 10 kilometers to get, a feel for how much steepness there is. And if you talk about 3,000 over 23, that is just immense. I mean, I think the most I've done was a 700 for every 10k race. So now that's double that. So it really is serious. That's brilliant, Martin. Thanks very much for your time, and best of luck with the event next month.
Thanks for you.
So Martin mentioned the Matterhorn Ultrax, which is one of the many trail events in the Alps. And just after I spoke to him, I went over and took part in a race called the Eiger Trail, which is based in Grindelwald. It was a great event. Really enjoyed it. 51k, 3,100 meters of vertical. There's so many trail running events in the mountains now. Pretty much every resort has their own race in the summer. Regular listeners will know that in about 3 weeks' time, in fact, literally 3 weeks today, I'll be taking part in the UTMB, which is like a massive challenge. It's 171 kilometers, 9.5, 10,000 meters of vertical. I actually was running through Les Houches last week, Jasmin, on there, which is the early part of the course. I covered it in 4 days, fast packing it. But really hard to get my head around doing the whole thing in one go. So, listener, you'll find out how I do in our next episode, which will be in September, or you can follow me on Twitter at Skipedia to find out. That recce that I did was very good, even though I did it over 4 days. I've done the whole course, I've seen the whole thing, I know the different peaks. The issue is the time. Going into, I've done a few 24-hour races before, but for me, this will take me, 40, 42, 44 hours. So you go through 2 nights. So what will happen when I get into that second night, without sleep, and also, as you know, in the Alps, you can get all sorts of weather. If the weather's okay, great. If you get one of the thunderstorms, etc., then it could be more difficult. But,
so how much kit do you have with you, Iain, when you're doing that?
There is a list of compulsory kit that you have to have on you. Mm-hmm. So apart from, I guess, your regular running stuff, you have to have some leggings, waterproof trousers, an underlayer. They give you specific guidelines for how thick or how heavy they have to weigh.
Oh, wow.
A waterproof jacket, a hat, gloves, waterproof and windproof gloves, and then a few things like an emergency blanket, a whistle, like a bandage, and a bit of, you have to have a certain amount of calories that you're carrying with you and your phone, etc. So the pack will probably weigh about, excluding water, about 3 kilos.
Really? That's really light. You have like, I don't know, 10 kilos. So where do you camp?
Well, you don't. You keep
don't.
going.
You just...
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
really?
there are aid stations. So if you decided that you wanted to sleep, you can sleep. You can lie down on a bed for a while if you want to.
That's going to send you to some interesting places.
Well, apparently hallucinations are quite common in the second night. I spoke to someone just recently. He said that they saw a centaur with the head of George Michael. Which, it's that last element, which is the the bit that I don't know what will happen, but I'm quite well prepared for it. So, if I get a fair wind and the weather is okay, finishing, is winning, so to speak, in that kind of race. I'm not Killian Jornet. I just want to, get over the line. So we'll see how it goes. I'd just like to thank Johnny Goldsborough. He said, enjoyed hearing Jim back on the podcast and good to hear a bit of trail running news. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Johnny. And Chris Rose, love the show. Keep up the excellent work. And thanks for both of those two for buying me a coffee. If you enjoy listening to the Ski Podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ski podcast. All cuppers appreciated. And please do email theskipodcast@gmail.com if you've got any questions or suggestions for items that you'd like to listen to on the show. Now, coming up in our next episode, I'll be reviewing the UTMB. We're going to be talking about the Birmingham Ski Show, which is coming up at the end of October. A little chat about sustainability as well, and whatever else crops up between now and then. And Jasmin, I'd like to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Emily as well.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
And thanks again, listener. And you can listen to us again next time.